shadow. I am very proud of myself for keeping up, for starting this series. I have learned that that is one thing that is helpful for me to be more consistent, is to have kind of a unstructured challenge for myself. So maybe 2 months ago, I did like a 30-day challenge where every day I was, coming on in the morning and posting about my mixed media practice. And so now I am combining, two things that I do together. One, which is, I nerd out and I read a lot of arts and culture um, platforms and keep up with like what's going on, especially like films and everything. The Black Girl Nerds website, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook is a good source for some of as well. And so here we are. Um, Today, what I want to talk about is one new thing and then one other kind of topic that I'm probably going to continue to recenter because it's so important for the times right now. But I want to start off by talking about Snoop. So, Snoop has been in the headlines for a few different reasons. One of the main reasons is for his commentary on a movie that he took. This could have been like one of his grandchildren that he took to go see a Disney movie, and he had some thoughts about it that were homophobic. But one of the other things that I saw in art news that came up around him that I thought was pretty interesting was he recently did a collaboration. Snoop did a collaboration with an artist. And in that collaboration, they put together, it was either three art pieces. And each of those art $9,000, leading to a total of $148,000. And the headline says art collection featuring Snoop Dogg smoke blunts fetches 148,000 at auction. So I was like, let me read a little bit more about that. If y'all, don't know, I am clearly an artist, but I'm also a therapist. And one of the things that I um, support my clients in, I'm harm reduction centered. And so many of my clients, one of the things that is a part of their wellness journey are things like psychedelics, also just other kind of plant medicines, and I support my clients in those decisions for themselves and how to be safe and things like that. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't have any problem with, art that centers, plant medicine, weed and things like that. So I was like, let me read up a little bit more. Hi there. Let me read up a little bit more on what this actually entailed. And so, what it looks like is he collaborated with an artist um, named Erica Kovitz, and apparently this person is the founder of a company called Joint Venture, and you can find them on Instagram. You can also check out the piece that they collaborated on, but the piece is called Snoop Doggy Dogg Genesis Burn. And so these are light boxes. So it's like a shadow box if you will, right? So it's glass, and on the inside of the glass is coated with crystal clear epoxy and a layer of marijuana resin before being framed in an acrylic shadow box. And so, like I said, all of these works, they started off at $9,000 rather, all totaling $148,000. And so the image that I'm looking at it's a picture of Snoop, and then it's a smoked blunt on the inside. And so these two pieces are inside of this shadow box, and like I said, there's a clear epoxy on the outside with marijuana resin covering it. So I thought that was pretty interesting, because I'm like, what would be the purpose of that? What would be the purpose of buying a shadow box that is covered, that has a layer of marijuana resin? But anyway, that's not one of the reasons why I was interested in it as well. It just made me think about the times right now, meaning what and how celebrities are using their celebrity power, how different music artists specifically kind of cross over into the visual art sector of the art world. And I haven't really fleshed out fully like my thoughts on this, but it reminds me of that conversation that happened maybe like it had to be like 2 or 3 summers ago, where Jay-Z was co-opting um, some language related to organizing. And this is kind of around their art, him and Beyonce's art collecting as well. But it just reminds me of these conversations about how celebrities co-opt and collude with capitalism, specifically black capitalism. Um, on the thumbnail for this video, I have a picture of Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats, and I always go back to their collection of art. It's called the Dean Collection. Well, it's the Dean Collection, and their art um their art collection is called Giants, Giants. And that went on tour. It started at the Brooklyn Museum last year. And there's a whole lot of controversy actually around that opening. But Giants opened last year in the Brooklyn Museum, and it's been to 2 different places since then. It was in Atlanta at the beginning of this year, and it just recently wrapped up in Minnesota. If I remember correctly, it's either a 50-piece collection or a 100-piece collection. It has a variety of giants, really heavy hitter kind of artists in their collection. Um, and so, yeah, that they're opening in Brooklyn. It was controversial because on that same night there were um, protests going on for Palestine. I know that Micheline Thomas attended this particular opening, and quite a few other celebrities and also very well known names in the art world, specifically Black artists, were there as well. And it makes me really question their politics, which is hard. Some of my favorite artists, people like Simone Lee, Lorna Simpson, and a few other folks, I have not seen them use their platforms to highlight not just Palestine, right? Things that are going on in Sudan and many of the other places, even just things that are going on here in the United States. I would say that what happened recently with Amy Sherald, And her deciding, to remove her, to step back from the exhibition because of the ask around her piece called Transforming Liberty. They wanted her to um alter that piece of artwork, and she wasn't going for that. Outside of Amy Sherrill's public display, of refusing to give in specifically around, trans identity, and highlighting that in her art piece, um, there haven't really been that many like public displays of solidarity. One that comes to mind though is Solange. I remember this was either sometime last year or 2 years ago. Um, Solange put up a post on her Instagram, and said that she stood with Palestine. Even those kinds of just small gestures, to let folks know like how you feel about things, right? I think it's super important. And so when I look at like Snoop's artwork and that crossover, and then again like this piece with Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats, it makes me wonder about celebrities, and specifically black ones, and what, how they use their power and celebrity. It's kind of bringing to mind a video that I don't know if y'all remember or even saw this, and I would have to go back and find it. I know at one point I had downloaded the video, but I've had to delete so much stuff off my phone. Um, what is this? Lizzo. She did a video a while back basically saying that, we're mistaken. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Um, Lizzo did a video basically saying like we're mistaken, that celebrities actually don't have the power that we think that they do, and that's BS. Uh, but I think many celebrities will default to that. Many folks who have platforms, and really that's what it's about. Like you have this huge platform where so many eyes, you know, are there to watch what you're doing on a daily basis. And so to take the time to at least use your platform to bring awareness, to certain things, especially what's going on right now politically, I think is super important. So many of the black artists, that have made names for themselves, I'm kind of giving them a side eye right now, like what are you doing with your platform? Um, Let me see. I have my little notes over here because I will definitely get thrown off and forget everything that I was supposed to come on here and talk to y'all about. Um, I started this particular live stream off talking about, how excited I am to just talk a little bit more about the things that I read on a daily basis. But really, me coming on here and talking to y'all about like art stuff, like that is something that I love. It's something that, I would love to have other community with, to have like a arts and culture bestie, um, to just sit up and gossip with about the stuff that's going on in the art world. To be like, child, did you see what's going on with that? Did you hear about that? Especially like 2 videos ago, I did a rant on Micheline Thomas and her wife Rachel Chevron and how they're not together anymore. How not Rachel? Did I say Rachel? I meant to say Raquel. And that Raquel was on the Real Housewives of New York. And I have got to watch Real Housewives of New York so that I can see if Raquel talks about this lawsuit that she filed against Micheline Thomas for $10 million for back wages and sexual harassment. Their dynamic is literally like the real L word in real time with all the drama and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, who can I talk to about this? Like, let me go on YouTube and see if anybody else, if any of my other arts and culture besties um are just as interested in like the tea around their relationship too. Cause I'm like, what? I didn't even realize that they weren't together anymore because they were still working together. Um, but it's things like that that inspire me to just come on here and not only just sketch with y'all in the morning, but also just chop it up about what I read, yesterday, and what I think about it, and really what y'all think about it too. Um, I talked a little bit about, I brought up Amy Sherrill and, how her uh, public display of standing with not only standing by her artwork, but also standing with the trans community related to visibility and representation. This is a really interesting time for the arts and culture sector. I personally feel, at least in my lifetime, I have not seen the arts and culture sector really like organize and mobilize in this particular way. Censorship is high. It's high right now for the art world. And so to see how folks are kind of coming together and speaking out about it, I think is super important. Um, I read an article that highlighted this petition that's going around now in the arts and culture community. It's called The Cultural Freedom Demands Collective Courage, a nationwide statement of values and principles for the field of arts and culture. And basically, it talks about the issues that the arts and culture sector have with how the government is getting involved with what's being put out, what is considered culture right now, this whole push for Americanisms, as they would, call it. In the article, it says it's a rare instance of coordinated resistance to the Trump administration's efforts to influence cultural programming and funding, which have been met with mostly piecemeal resistance from the cultural sector. And so, yeah, like that kind of acknowledges, um, I would say, like previous silence, minimal efforts around the arts and sector culture, but folks are not standing for it. Um, and there were quite a few folks that they highlighted in this article that did sign it. Amy Sherrill, they talked about Amy Sherrill's op-ed that she wrote on that dropped on MSNBC like 3 days ago now. And if that's something that you're interested in, you can find it on my page. I did link it if you want to read it, but I also talk about it in my video that I did yesterday. Um, Ibrahim Kendi, the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, was also targeted by the Trump administration. Um, it basically talks about, this article highlights his response to some of the commentary in this review that the administration did on different arts and cultural institutions Um, there are pieces and parts of how to be an anti-racist that are included in an exhibition. And it basically talks about the texts that were pulled from the book highlight what is white culture in the United States. And this review that was done by the White House names Kahindi as a woke professor or something like that, a extremely woke professor or something like that. And Kahindi basically, says that that's a way to target. That comment was a way to target his work, like labeling him in that way is a way to target his work. And basically like what he thinks about that. Um, oh, and he, was basically saying that, MAGA and Trump supporters, they basically wouldn't get his work anyway. So I think that it's really important for, again, folks that have power platforms to really center, these issues right now, these challenges, and also looking at what the impacts are going to be long term. Many of the creators I see are likening much of what is going on in the arts and culture sector to, I need to grab. Many of the folks in the arts and culture sector are like likening much of this to Germany. I don't want to say the name, but y'all know the name um, because of the algorithm. But many are kind of likening it to that. And, there are just more direct examples that we can use historically, like Reagan from the 80s to the 90s. There were some interesting conversations happening in culture, censorship and suppression, and so yeah, I there are other examples that I feel like make the case for not only why we need to be paying attention, but also that this happens every few years in the United States where there is this purge, if you will. Like that's the first word that comes to mind. I'm sure there's something else I could put in that place, but it's like a purge of certain culture, things that what we consider culture. There's a reset, to what has been classified as culture, what will continue to be funded as culture, right? And so when we look at those kind of patterns and trends within the arts, culture, community, and sector, like what does that mean? How are we preparing for that? Because again, it just feels like that is a recurring pattern. Um, One of my like secret passions is to do some type of consulting or show up, give some commentary, give more political as it relates to the arts and culture sector within local and state government. Yeah, because there are just some interesting patterns that I feel like get ignored, overlooked. Um, and so when I think about like what's happening now with the administration and how there's this hyper focus on this, and then also to see, like places like the Smithsonian, um, and these other uh institutions just fold, just collapse into what the administration wants. I think that there's something to be said, um, even in these statements about holding these larger institutions accountable. You know, that goes back to my comment about what Lizzo said about celebrities and power. It's the same thing with these large arts and culture institutions too. Like, why are y'all buckling? You know, and are you buckling because of money? You know, because you want to ensure that you get funded. I think that there's something to be said about that. You know, I think as an artist, it breaks the trust. I would think that Amy Sherrill, you know, I know I would be looking at the what are these people called? The Smithsonian, the National Portrait Gallery for the Smithsonian. I would be looking at them like, I don't trust you all. Like, you all aren't a safe institution. Um, Not only for the truths that I'm trying to hold, but even me as an artist, like, it doesn't give respect. It doesn't give like what these spaces are truly for. Amy Sherrill in her op-ed highlights how museums are places, where collective memory and collective remembrance can happen. What if you're going in these spaces and it's just, again, this environment where American exceptionalism, is the vibe. And then what does that even mean, right? Like, who gets left out in that? So those are my rambles, my passionate rambles for the morning on what's been going on in art news. I talked about Snoop and tied in, again, like how folks with huge platforms, with celebrity, with access, social capital are using their platforms right now. And then also giving this example of how different artists and scholars like Amy Sherrill, Ibrahim Kendi, have either written op-eds or are doing interviews where they speak up about what their experiences are with this administration and how they're not going for it. And how does that trickle down into the community, right? For community artists like myself, related to advocating for yourself, even for these local galleries, right? These local galleries. Because if it's happening at the level of the Smithsonian, then it's definitely happening at the level of local museums and local galleries, right? Where folks are um, leaning into the administration's tone around what gets considered arts and culture. And what does that mean? I've been on here 30 minutes with y'all. I hope that you have a good rest of your day. And I'll see y'all in the morning.